G'day ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to something that is kind of like a first impressions of Hearthstone but isn't. And I say that in that this isn't like most first impressions and that it's kind of like a look at whether the game's good or not, but rather it's literal first impressions of the game for me, at least. And I'm making this video based purely off of the fact that the game is quite harsh for newcomers. It's very heavily favours people who have been playing for long periods of time, and this is above and beyond skill levels. And I'm saying this in reference to the fact that as you're starting the game, you've got basically fuck all cards to pick from. You've got no legendaries, like you'll get one legendary, I believe, when you first start. You've got basically only common cards, and you really don't have any option to build a decent deck out of these. And the problem with this is that matchmaking in Hearthstone is absolutely atrocious. If you go in to play a ranked or even a casual match against other people, you're pretty much almost guaranteed to be playing against someone who isn't of a similar playtime as you. You're going to be playing against someone who's been playing for years, who's got all the latest cards that are available, who's running things like... oh Christ, what is his name again? Dr. Boom, that's him. People are running Dr. Boom and new players can't really get him because he's kind of rare to get in packs and costs a lot to make, and yet he's running 50% of all decks these days. It's just generally not a very good situation for new players at all. It wouldn't be this bad, mind you, if Blizzard actually did something about the matchmaking algorithm they have, as I've gone up against gold level players, like players that have gold portraits and stuff, 500 ranked wins, etc, etc. And this is when I'm just first starting out in the game, and it's like, wow, you're gonna put me against someone like that? Christ. I mean, that's how a laddering system's supposed to work. It's supposed to show your skill level, and if someone played like 1,000 games or something, and they're sitting up at rank 20 with all the other, well, relatively low-skilled people, then they're going to match them with other rank 20s. However, it doesn't really factor in the fact that if you have a very poor selection of cards to build a deck from, you're more often than not going to be performing subpar in comparison to everybody else. I mean, when you're first starting the game, and this is obviously remediable after a couple of games, it's kind of a good point. When you're first starting off as playing such as a druid, you don't even have your swipe cards, and those are pretty much run in, well, a vast majority of druid decks. Other cards that are almost necessary in this meta, Big Game Hunter, for instance, is really important in today's meta because so many people are running things like Dr. Boom and such. So you kind of do need these anti-meta cards in order to actually compete. And unfortunately, new players don't really have that. And then there's a different kettle of fish all entirely, and that is the fact that it takes so long to actually acquire anything. It's going to take you at least 2 days on average to get enough for a booster pack, let alone how many days it's going to take you to unlock all the wings in the latest expansion. 700 gold just for one wing of an expansion is a bit excessive. Just a bit of a rough calculation in my head is roughly a week minimum to unlock one ring, and that's if you're playing constantly. getting the 3 win bonus 10 gold to supplement the fact that you're also... Actually, no, it's more like 2 weeks. Never mind. And this grind is one of the biggest killers. Like, I've succumbed to the free-to-play and become pay-to-play with this, buying the Naxxramas expansion as well. It's a good variety of cards, and even though it does cost me what another game would cost me, I decided to go and buy it just because it'll enable me to compete with other people. It's not only that, only the grinding and the fact that you don't have a wide selection of cards, it's also the fact that there's a lot of power creep in Hearthstone. Especially with the newer stuff, you'll find that some cards just completely and utterly outstrip other cards, even if they're the same cost. For instance, Dr. Boom, I keep on coming back to Dr. Boom, but he is the most glaring example of this. Dr. Boom completely outshines every other 7-drop in the game. You're looking at things like, just off the top of my head, golems, for instance. He's a 7-drop. Yeah, the value you get with him is ridiculous. 7/7 plus summons 2 1/1s that deal between 1 to 4 damage when they die. That's ridiculous value in comparison to other cards that are more easily acquirable. And this is only going to get worse and worse as the game progresses. The barrier for entry is far, far too high in Hearthstone. You're practically almost forced to start paying for content in order to catch up to where everyone else is. And I really don't see Blizzard doing anything to address this. It's been a bit over a year now, and there's been expansions and adventures and all the rest of it that have come out, and there's still nothing. You're still having to grind and grind and grind all the time, unless you want to drop a couple of $100 just to get up to where everyone else is. And unfortunately, you're going to have to drop a couple of $100 as more expansions come out, as you just can't really sustain grinding to catch up with everyone else. If there's another expansion like Goblins vs. Gnomes that comes out that delivers buttloads of extra cards, well, you're gonna have to do so much work and so much effort just to be able to catch up. I'm just going over the same points over and over here, but Blizzard really needs to do something. Like, for instance, making quests a bit more frequent, making quests give a bit more gold or something, giving new players right off the bat a bunch of dust to craft your own cards, for instance. That sort of thing would work really well, in my opinion. You'd be able to craft some of the important cards that are important in the current meta. For instance, I don't want to use him again, but Dr. Boom. He's probably a poor example there, but he's just such a good card that everyone runs, and it just sticks out like a sore thumb. It's almost impossible not to avoid mentioning anything about him. I digress again, though. As a new person, I just really wish that Blizzard would show some attention to the people that are trying to get into it. They're trying to address the fact that for a while there, Hearthstone was quite stagnant in terms of content. Like, before the Naxxramas adventure, there was just absolutely nothing for ages and ages and ages, and the game was at risk of dying out because of it. But now you've had Goblins vs. Gnomes, now recently the Blackrock not expansion, adventure is what they're calling it. And those have filled out everyone's interest quite nicely. They've added a lot of different dynamics to the game, and they're obviously going to continue on doing that to keep people's keep existing customers' interest, well, still on Hearthstone. But Hearthstone, unfortunately, if Blizzard doesn't really do anything to address the barrier for entry of being competitive in Hearthstone, for new players, that was a bit of a mouthful, the game is slowly going to teeter out. Teeter the right word? No. Burn out. As no one wants to pay the hundreds of dollars in order to actually be up to where everyone else is. Unless they make everything more... Unless they give power creep a bit more emphasis, which is probably a really horrible thing they shouldn't do in the first place, but unless they actually do allow power creep to get more out of hand than what it already is, sort of Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh! Out of hand, then you could kind of expect new players to just skip all the old expansions and just only buy the boosters for the newer, better cards out there. I guess that could work, however, that's just kind of invalidating all the old content that came before, which really doesn't solve any problems. It's a bit of a mess, and unless they actually try and address this with some smart decisions, I feel like Hearthstone, unfortunately, is going to teeter out eventually. I keep saying teeter out, burn out eventually. You can only keep people's interest in the game for so long. You need to start thinking about injecting new lifeblood into the game. Also, I'd like to apologise for the frequent stoppings. I've actually been recovering from a flu. But yes, I think that's everything I wanted to say. I guess I could give a brief summary of what I think of the game. Excellent. It's the funnest game to watch that I've ever seen, and I've probably spent more time watching the game than I have actually playing the game. Which is quite weird that a game has become an excellent source of watchable entertainment rather than playable entertainment for me, but it is what it is. Anyways, thank you very much for watching. Please send me a comment in the comment section down below. I really like feedback. I kind of believe that if I don't get any form of criticism, bad or good criticism, mind you, that I'm not actually performing well enough in order to, like, justify your opinion. But yeah, I'm rambling on a bit too much, and I've taken up a bit too much of your time. Anyways, thank you very much for listening. Please let me know what you think in the comment section down below, and I will see you possibly next time. Ciao!